by 6 minutes. So I'm really so sorry for that. So you're welcome once again. So right now, we are going to be going straight to the British anthem, the national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, we are once again welcome to the Readers and Writers Conference. The theme of this year's conference is the readers, the writers, and nation building. And we are going to be opening this conference with that topic, reading and emotional well-being, connecting the dots. Reading and emotional well-being, connecting the dots. But right now we're just going to be knowing more about the Readers and Writers Conference. So it gives us an overview of what the conference is actually all about. Over to you. I can see it there. It doesn't have a. Kí ló dé tẹ́ ẹ download it? Oh no, it's been there since. So while we're waiting for that would come later, I'm glad to inform us that we've got our guest speaker here in person of Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi. So right now we're just going to be going through the bio of our guest speaker, Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi. Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi is an NHS consultant psychiatrist, a fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and author of Footprints of Giants. He is the founder of Tripart Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub and convener of the Tripart Care Mind Gym courses and workshops. Tripart Care provides mental health education and support to Black and church communities in a scripturally aligned, culturally in tune, and socially relevant style. Tribal Care has a vibrant YouTube channel and WhatsApp support group. Dr. T has been featured in a series of BBC radio interviews on faith and mental health. He is a spokesperson for a number of Office for Health Improvement and Disparity, or HID, public mental health campaigns. Dr. T is a trained mentor and coach and the executive lead of Mentor into Medicine, an organization that empowers schools and college students from disadvantaged and backgrounds to enter into medical school. Dr. T is a pastor, author, and newspaper columnist. He's happily married with 2 young adult children. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi to the Readers and Writers Pre-Conference Session 2023. Thank you very much. Dr. T, we want to say we are so happy to have you join us at this year's Readers and Writers Conference. And we know that we are set to learn a lot. I know some people have gone to church and would have some people join us or some people watching later the replay of this pre-conference session, because it's going to be on our website, and it's going to also, we're going to have the bullet points out so that those that are not here, they can learn, because I know that we're going to learn a lot from today. And I just want to let us know that there would also be a question and answer session. So please, as Dr. T, when it's time for the main session today, please, if you have any question as the session is going on, just keep your question on one side, write it down on one side, so that at the end, then we can be able to take the question and answer session. Hallelujah. So I would just, while we wait for that video to play, I'll just tell us a bit about the Descendants of David Ministry Charity. So we are a registered charity to promote Christianity in the United Kingdom via books, via music, and drama, and all forms of media, and also we've also got the DODM virtual book club. That is the outlet through which we serve the community. We've got our members there. We not only reach out to our members, but we reach out to the world as a whole, as it is a virtual book club. We've got our own books also, and they are free. So if you're watching or you're here with us in this conference, if you want to access any of our resources, you can send an email to us at info@descendantsofdavidministries.com, info@descendantsofdavidministry.com. So the Readers and Writers Conference actually started off as something very, very different, very unique. It started off last year. And last year's conference, we actually gained a lot. There were so many positive feedbacks from last year's conference. It was very educative, it was impactful, it was unique. We had different sessions. The last year's conference focused on raising or preparing the next generation of readers and writers, and we had sessions that cut across storytelling, sessions that crossed across diction and elocution, across it cuts across leadership, and we also had the L section that was connecting the dots, LD reading, LD writing, LD mind. Connecting the dots. Connecting the dots is actually one of our core values at the Raw conference. Um, we had different training sessions also. So at the end of that, um, it was so quite loaded and impactful for the participants. And I know that people are looking forward to this year's conference. We've also got the um, exhibition stand. So if you're an author and you're watching either online or you're in the Zoom room and you would want to exhibit your book at the main conference, because that would actually, it came up last year at the maiden edition of the conference, and it's also coming up this year. So there are some guidelines for the virtual exhibition. If you're an author, multiple submission of books are welcome, but we have some guidelines, so you can read them over either on our Instagram page. Our Instagram page is at DODM Charity. Um, if you Google DODM Charity, we're there, or on our website www.descendantsofdavidministries.com. So you'll be able to know more about us, about what we do, where we're coming from, where we are now, what impact we have made in the community, via various things that we do. So I think I've spent a bit of time telling us about the Readers and Writers Conference. So right now we'll just go over to the just to know more about the Readers and Writers Conference too. Thank you. Hello and welcome to Readers and Writers Conference. My name is Olubusola Ajayi. I'm just here to tell us more about, or let us know about, the Readers and Writers Conference. The Readers and Writers Conference, also known as RAW Conference, was set up to merge together the perspectives, thought, and expectations both from the readers as well as the writers. What we read or write have a far-reaching effect, as well as a ripple effect on individuals, the family, the community, as well as the nation. It forms an ecosystem of some sort. So the Readers and Writers Conference is one of such conferences that serves as an interface to help us to connect the dots, to improve, to grow, and to deliver to the expectation of our target audience, and ultimately to make the society and the nation a better place. So the maiden edition was held in July 2022, and shortly after, the post-conference outreach also began. And it's been interesting findings what we've been able to bring out from exclusive interviews, from exclusive magazines, etc., etc. We've been able to connect the dots. The Readers and Writers Conference is actually built on the framework of our core values, and we've been exploring the area of dot connecting, which is one of the things we'll be doing today at the Readers and Writers Pre-Conference Session 2023. And also we've been looking at the how we could promote the reading culture in the United Kingdom, as that is one of our values at the Descendant of David Ministry Charity. So to promote the reading culture. And it's also linked to our DODM Virtual Book Club, because that is the avenue through which we not only distribute books, we also encourage people to read, to develop that reading culture. So it's been interesting findings so far, and the way the Readers and Writers Conference have been set up, we have the pre-conference, schedule. We have the main conference and the post-conference outreach. So it's like a build up, and the output of what we have would help us to serve the community better, to serve the society better, and that is what the post-conference outreach is all about: reaching out to our community, reaching out to individuals, reaching out to our virtual reading community, because we actually have a virtual reading community in which we connect with. So it's been a successful conference, and I look forward to what we are going to discovering. The theme of this year's Raw conference is the reader, the writer, and nation building. How do we connect these dots, from looking at the power of the reader, the power of the writer, and how the nation can be built? From the conference talk, I earlier stated that nation building is it's not a static process, it's not a spontaneous process, but what it is built on, on continuous work, continuous improvement, critical thinking. And it's not just a one-off process, it's a rolling process, it's a continuous process. So I want to welcome you to the Readers and Writers Conference 2023, opening with the pre-conference session. And I know you're going to learn a lot. You and I are going to learn a lot. And what we are going to gain from the sessions, all the sessions rolling down to the main conference in July, 1st of July, and then bringing out the outputs in our post-conference outreaches, I know that it's going to be transformation now, not only on the reader, not only on the writer, but also in our community, in Lincolnshire, in England, and also in United Kingdom as a whole. Thank you very much, and enjoy the conference. Hello, everyone. We're still on the Readers and Writers pre-conference session, and we've got, like I said before, if you're just joining us, we've got our speaker for today in person of Dr. T. Olubusola Ajayi. He's an author. We have read his bio before, probably just coming in. He is an author. He's a consultant psychiatrist and a fellow. I'm not sure I have the whole of the bio again, but I'll just go through it because it'll be coming up in about a minute now to take us in that main session, which is the one and only session for today, and that is reading and emotional well-being, connecting the dots. But if you're just joining us, I just wanted to say a bit about Dr. T. He's an NHS consultant psychiatrist, a fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and author of Footprint of Giant, and he's the founder of Tripartite Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub. So we would like to welcome you, sir, Dr. T. Olubusola Ajayi. You're welcome, sir.
To share thoughts. I'm particularly excited and also delighted that you have considered emotional well-being as a valid point and as something to be discussed in a reader and writers conference, because that's very key. We really need to we produce our best work when we are not only physically well, but we are also emotionally and spiritually well. So the whole man has got to be well in order for us to produce our best work. And I know that tonight I'm speaking to creatives who are authors as well as readers, because we are all creatives, some of us in different aspects of our lives. But particularly when it comes to writing, when it comes to reading, when it comes to journaling, it's really a world of creatives, and we need to be in our best form to be able to produce our best work. So I'm really delighted to be here, and it gives me a lot of pleasure to be able to share some of the thoughts on my heart this evening. I'm just going to start off by sharing my screen, and we'll take our cue from there. Right, good. All right, I believe that everyone can see my screen now. Brilliant. Okay. Will I just have a thumbs up to be sure that everyone can see my screen? Just a thumbs up. Brilliant. Good. Thank you. Brilliant. Good. So that's what we are doing, reader and writers. And what my theme tonight is reading and emotional well-being. And we are going to be joining the dots. And so I'm going to try throughout the course of this, the next 45 minutes, or a little less than 45 minutes now, to try and join those dots. And this is really what this is my plan, the outline for tonight. We're going to talk about the rationale, which I think I've said a bit about already in terms of the rationale. We're talking about mental well-being, emotional well-being to writers and to authors and to readers. We've talked a bit about that. I'm going to develop those thoughts further. And then what reading does to the brain. What exactly happens to our brain when we read? That's really very important. And then what's the emotional impact of reading? We are going to look at that in terms of what the evidence shows in terms of reading for children and also reading for adults. Because I like the fact that Ms. Ajayi said that last year you talked about building a legacy. Focusing, spotlighting the coming generation of writers and readers. The onus is on us. The duty is on us. The responsibility is on us to actually nurture the coming generation. I was listening to a sermon today, and they were saying that children should not grow by osmosis. Children should not just grow by default. It's the responsibility of parents to nurture children in every aspect of their lives. And so I'm delighted that that's part of the things that the Readers and Writers Conference is doing in terms of focusing specifically on the coming generation, nurturing them, helping them to learn from our own mistakes, helping them to also learn from our own experiences, the things we've done right, so that they don't start from where we start. We give them a leg up, but also that we also guide them so that they don't make the same mistakes that we've made. That's a legacy, isn't it? It's about starting for them to stand on our own shoulders so that they can see a lot further than we saw when we were starting off. And of course, we're also going to talk about reading and purpose. And I'm going to share a personal experience. I like to share personal accounts in these things because we can talk about theories, we can talk about what we read in research, we can talk about all these things. But it's always beautiful when we can relate it to somebody that we can see. And so I usually try to share as much as possible personal experiences. And then I'm going to talk a little about writer's block. And that's particularly, the reason I'm talking about that is because I really sense in my heart that there's somebody who needs to listen to that part of what I'm going to say. And I really believe that I'm aware that this is a Christian organization. I'm also aware, I really believe that I've got a specific word for one or two people who are listening tonight. And then we're going to go into the question and answer. Just to say that whenever I'm presenting in a professional capacity, I will usually use a disclaimer and say that this is only for public mental health education only, and that people should consult with their healthcare providers. But I always put the proviso that I know I'm in the midst of friends, but there's nothing to worry about really. Right. So we're in the post-COVID era. I think it's okay to say that we are now post-lockdown. We are in a post-COVID era, and that's where we are, May 2023. However, the world before March 2020 is not the world we now live in. And that is very key. Even if mental health or emotional well-being was not important to writers and readers pre-COVID, out of the lockdown, it's now important that we start talking about emotional well-being. because that has become a key thing. The COVID-19 pandemic and generally the lockdown has changed our world. And so that's one of the rationales why it's important for writers and readers to know about this, particularly writers, because we need to know that we are now writing to a different world. We are now writing to a different group of people than the people that we wrote to previously. So what do we know? Just generally, we do know what has changed in the world. We know that mental difficulties, emotional problems look like they've been brought to the fore by the lockdown. We now, for instance, there was a large survey. The office of the Mental Health Foundation did a very large survey. They looked at a large population of the UK adults. And what did they find? This was a very instructive survey because, one, they studied a very large population, but not only so, they also looked at, they also did it installmentally every 3-monthly period from about March 2020 up until well into September 2022. So 13 waves of studying large populations of over 4,000 people. And they found out that people generally reported that pre-COVID compared to post-COVID, that people found that they were coping less than they used to cope. What they also found out was that 6 in 10 Black people regularly experience anxiety, particularly to do with juggling family life, a ever-looming to-do list, and then lack of ability to be able to cope with all the different demands in their lives, and particularly lack of sleep. The other thing that we also found out is that Google also did an analytical. They did an analytical of their Google search, and what did they found? They found that on Sunday, particularly Sunday evenings, there's a spike in the number of people who Google on sadness, dealing with depression, and they also found that on Mondays there was a spike in the number of people who search on sleep disturbances. The interpretation that has been put to that is this: that on Sunday, people are worried about going back to work. And Sunday evening is a downtime for most people as they worry about facing the work week. And that on Monday, after they've been to work and they've started their work week, they then begin to worry about sleep because of the anxiety that has been aroused from work. And what they also found was that the 25 to 34-year-olds were the commonest who experienced anxiety, particularly when employed. All of this is just to tell us that the context that we are now writing to, the people that we are writing to, are different, and that we need to bear their emotional well-being in mind as we write. So this is a famous quote, and it's part of Joining Adults. George R.R. Martin said, "A reader's life, a reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies, but the man who never reads lives only once." That a reader will live 1,000 lives because of the places where the reading takes them to, but that somebody who doesn't read lives only once. So how does that affect readers and writers? How does that affect us? The way to think about it is this: what do we know about the current reading habits in the UK? What do we know? How much do we read in the UK? Because at least that's a local or national community. Another survey that was carried out actually showed that about half of those who were surveyed, this was also a large population, people who were surveyed, were another over 4,000 population. They found out that half of those said they read for pleasure, about half, just a little over half of them, and that females more than males were those who tended to read for pleasure, but that the retired people who are retired among us were more likely to be those who read in that way, but also that bedtime was the most frequent reading time, and that for those who used to read, they used to be leisure readers, they used to read for leisure or for pleasure, and no longer read, that there were a third of people who were surveyed, a third of the adults who were surveyed, who said, yes, but a while back I used to read, but now I no longer read. And some of the things that were cited was either because of a life event, either because they've had children, or things that have changed, they've had a chronic illness, or their work is more busy, or they have more responsibilities in their lives. But what was interesting was that all of them, more than 50% of them, said that they were that time constraint was the main thing. And this is all quoted from a very large piece of research, like I said. And I've put a reference for this in the resource, which I'm going to share as well at the end of the presentation. It's titled "Reading Between the Lines: The Benefits of Reading for Pleasure," and it's by Quick Reads, University of Liverpool, 2015. So it's in the reference, like I said. So now let's try and join the dots. So what has reading got to do with mental health? What has reading got to do with emotional well-being? What has reading got to do with being mentally well and being emotionally well? We cannot talk about the link between reading and emotional well-being and the impact of reading on that, except we really know what it means to even be. We need to know the starting point. What are we aiming for? Because, people say, if you start out on a journey and you don't know where you are headed, how do you know when you've arrived? And so really, what's our measuring stick? What's our yardstick? And in terms of looking at our yardstick, a very good place to look would be to look at what the World Health Organization says about mental health or emotional well-being. What they say is that it's actually a state of well-being in which an individual is able to fulfill their potential. They are able to cope with the stresses of life. They're able to work productively, and they're able to contribute to community. Let's try and join the dots there. The reality is that if we want to be writers, if we want to really excel and do the work we do well as writers, and also if we want to be able to maximize as readers, if we want to be able to maximize those things, we need to be in a good state, emotional state. Because according to the World Health Organization here, it's been able to realize our full potential. So in order to be able to realize our full potential as writers, we need to be we need to be in a good emotional place. In order to be able to cope with the normal stresses of life, we need to be in a good emotional place and to be able to make meaningful contribution. And so I'm sure that everyone here wants their writing to be impactful. We want our writings to transform communities. We want our writings to transform, to really make impact, generational impact. If we want to do that, then we've got to look at our emotional well-being as well, because if we don't, then we are not able to do that. And then I like the way the Public Health Agency of Canada also described the same thing we are talking about. They say it's the capacity of each of us to think, feel, and act in ways that enhance our ability to enjoy life and to deal with the challenges that we face. You see, reading for pleasure was one of the things that I talked about earlier. And that's something that brings enjoyment into our lives. And the Public Health Agency of Canada is actually saying that that's part of our wellness. That's part of our emotional wellness, to be able to derive pleasure from life. But it's also a positive sense of emotional and spiritual well-being that respects the importance of culture, equity, social justice, interconnections, and personal dignity. When we look at that, culture, equity, social justice, interconnections, and personal dignity, we'll find that our reading is actually an easy way to get in touch with those things. When we read, it actually helps us in those diverse areas of our lives. It helps us in being able to connect with other people, in being able to share their experiences, in being able to enter their world, and to be part of that world. So what happens to our brains when we read? The first thing that we know that happens to our brains when we read is that it's not just one area of our brain that is stimulated or that is triggered when we read. Several parts from the front to the back to the middle of our brain actually stimulated, because reading is a complex task that entails several areas of the brain. And that's a good thing, meaning that really, it's like when they say, when you swim, they say, oh, swimming is a good exercise because it's almost like a universal exercise, because you exercise several aspects of your muscles, several parts of your body together at the same time by swimming. In the same way, that's how reading is to our brains. It stimulates several areas of our brains together at the same time. And we do know, when we look at the brain is actually it's simply a complex computer with several networks. We've got some of you are using your laptops currently. Some of you are using your phones. Some of us have 2 or 3 laptops at home, or we have a desktop, we have a laptop, we have an iPad, and all of them are interlinked, they're connected. Think about your brain as a mega network of billions of computers. And each of those billions of computers are nerve cells. And the more connected they are, the more they talk to each other effectively, the better our brain works. So when we read and we stimulate those several areas of our brains, we are actually doing our brain a lot of good. And the more, and the other thing we also know about reading is that it actually helps with the neural connections, the different connections between those billions of little computers that are connected together. And that reading creates emotional connection with the characters. So that there's also, and all of this, I'm going to, at the end of the presentation, there's a resource slide that actually shows some of these references. That the other thing we also do know that that reading does to our brain is that when we read emotionally charged words, either because they are romantic or because they are charged in terms of depicting violence or depicting strong emotions, maybe anger or joy or love, that the brain automatically slows down to actually concentrate on those words. So reading emotionally charged words as opposed to reading neutral words. So really, that tells us about the impact of reading on our brains. And then the other thing is that actually reading has also been demonstrated to improve emotional processing. Actually, in terms of helping us to process our emotions. Because we do know that unprocessed emotions, in terms of joining the dots, unprocessed emotions would always have an outlet. And many, many times, it's always a damaging outlet. If we don't process our emotions, then the emotions would have an outlet one way or the other. But usually, they are not helpful in the way they express themselves. So let's talk about the benefits of reading with the emotional well-being of children. What are the benefits of reading? How does that affect? One, there's studies showing that when children read, it helps them to cultivate empathy, the ability to be able to feel or put themselves in others' shoes, and it also improves their social skills. If I were to ask us, and I would like to interact with you here, if I were to ask us, what do we think is one of the most crucial tools or one of the most important social skills tools that children need to develop, what will it be? And please type in the chat. If I were to ask you, I'm sure I can see that there are some of us who are parents in the house. If I were to ask us, what will it be? And there are no strict right or wrong answers. Please just type in the chat. What do you think, in terms of tools, what do you think will be one of the key essential ingredients for children in terms of their communication? I'm just going to check and see what's happening in the chat. So please, okay, speech, I like that. Speech, yes, absolutely, speech, yes. Speech, anything else? Okay, right, yeah, I think I'll go with speech. Okay, there's another one there. Okay, right, sound, yes, okay, vision, good. Visualizing, good, thank you. Right, now let's try and join the dots. The interesting thing is that actually when we read, when children and adults read, those areas of our brain, including speech, including sound, including recognition, language recognition, all of those areas of the brain are stimulated by reading. And the bit that I was looking for is actually speech. Speech is what we use in communicating. And that's the key aspect of our communication. But it also includes our body language. But what we do know is that when children read, it also helps their communication in the sense that it develops their vocabulary. But it's not just developing their verbal vocabulary, it also develops their emotional vocabulary. You know, I think it's fair enough to say that there are so many Black people in this room this evening. I haven't seen anyone else, but I might be missing something. But the reason I say that is because from my experience as a psychiatrist, I know that as Black people, we are not always very good in describing our emotions. We are not very good in terms of using emotional language. But research shows that children who read, particularly from a very early age, it helps them to be able to develop their emotional vocabulary. And not only is it that they develop their emotional vocabulary, they are also able to label their own emotions. So it's not just that they have words to describe emotions, but when they are feeling a particular emotion, they're also able to say, this is the way I feel at the moment. I feel sad, I feel happy, I feel angry, I feel frustrated, I feel relaxed, I feel chilled, I feel energetic, I feel excited. That children who read are actually able to also label those emotions more. And not only so, they're also able to recognize those emotions in the people that they're interacting with. That's profound. It's profound because it means that not only do I know what's going on for me, I also know what's going on for other people. Really, we are talking about being emotionally intelligent here. And there's plenty of research now stacked up in the favor of the fact that people who are more emotionally intelligent they actually progress better in life, and that actually emotional intelligence is more crucial to leadership, effective leadership, and career success than intellectual intelligence. So really, reading, this is just this. We are still talking about children here. We haven't even got to the territory of adults. Now, what do we also know about reading in children? It improves their imagination because they escape into other worlds and other realities. So they're able to think, and we know that the power of imagination is also a very key one when it comes to problem solving. So it improves their creativity and also their problem solving as a result of their reading. We've talked about this, and of course, in consequence, their vocabulary, their communication, and their memory. And it helps them. Because of that, it gives them the confidence to actually approach tasks in their exams. And there is also some study about linking that to actually diminished exam anxiety. And the other thing that we also do know is that for children, establishing a bedtime routine, particularly when it helps a bedtime routine of reading, helps them be able to establish a routine. And if there was one thing that we could get right in investing into the mental well-being of our children and emotional well-being of our children for the future, is to make sure that when they are young, they get good sleep. Because sleep is a superpower when it comes to emotional well-being, not only now, but for the future. There are several pieces of research linking poor sleep to emotional problems in future. Alzheimer's, for instance, people are now saying that actually that the science for Alzheimer's disease, Alzheimer's dementia, have been there 20 years before. It's just that people have not picked up on it. It's just a time bomb which is ticking away, and it's not being picked up. And sleep is a key aspect of that. There's quite a lot of research linking poor sleep. So reading bedtime reading routine actually helps children to develop a bedtime routine, and also it's been linked with establishing a bond between their parents. In terms of that's something that parents do regularly with a child, and over time it improves trust. It develops that bond. And we've talked about the fact that it can also it's also related to being able to discern emotions. So let's now look at what does it do for adults. So if we were to talk about the common mental health conditions and emotional problems across the globe, anxiety will be one broad category. Depression is the next one. And depression carries a huge burden, not only on the person, but also on the community. You remember that we said earlier that that a state of mental well-being is a state in which somebody is able to fulfill their potential, but they're able to also contribute to community, and they're able to work productively. When depression is there, one is not able to tick all those boxes. One is not able to produce at one's optimal performance, and also one is not able to contribute meaningfully to community. Even if one goes to work, one is not able to give one's best. If one writes, one is not able to produce one's best work. If one reads, one concentration might be impaired, motivation might be impaired. So what do we know about reading and depression? we know that readers are less likely to report being depressed. And this is still talking about the Billington study, Reading for Leisure, which I quoted earlier, which is something from the University of Liverpool 2015, which the reference is at the end of the slide pack. So that people who read regularly are less likely to report feeling depressed. They are also, when they read regularly, reading regularly has also been associated with alleviating symptoms of depression. Such is that even the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, which is the body, is almost like the umbrella body that tells us in the UK what we should be doing with certain conditions. So basically, they are the watchdogs that say, actually, for depression, this is what you should be doing. For arthritis, this is what you should be doing. For bowel cancer, this is what you should be doing. For anxiety, this is what you should be doing. And they actually say, it's shortened from NICE, NICE. They actually say that bibliotherapy, which is reading for mental well-being, is part of the things that they recommend for mild depression. So that's how profound reading is in terms of emotional well-being. The other thing we do know is that people who read are likely to report better life satisfaction, and they are likely to report that they are not only happier with their lives, but they are also happier with their state generally, that they feel fulfilled and satisfied with their lives, and they are less likely to report feeling stressed. And also that reading combats loneliness and social isolation. And that's also joining the dots in terms of looking out not just for ourselves, but for our communities. So if there was one way that as a reader, you are thinking, how can I really impact my community? I'm a reader or I'm a writer, and I really want to do something in this little community. One of the things you could do is to start a reading club. Look, it could be for the children or it could be for adults. In terms of really, I want to start something. I want to bring people together. It could be online these days, or it could actually be face-to-face, where people come, because there's actually research showing that that reading, particularly in group reading settings, reading a book together combats loneliness and social isolation. And the other thing we do know about reading and mental emotional well-being, really relating to depression, is that is also associated with high self-esteem. People who read regularly, who habitually read for pleasure, are known to feel better about themselves than others. And that this is very good. Actually, I want to pause and say this because I want it to hit home. I want it to really, really sink. Research also shows that reading is more stress relieving than watching television or scrolling on social media. And just in case somebody missed that, I want to say it again, that research shows that reading is more stress relieving relative to watching television or social media scrolling. And I think if there is one thing that I could leave us with, it would be that. And also that bedtime reading is associated, when they carried out this survey, this is actually the results of the survey, which I've quoted at the back at the end of the presentation. And the survey actually showed as well that 50% of those who read regularly said that reading at bedtime actually improves their sleep. So what are the social benefits of reading? Some of them we've alluded to already, because we know that mental health or emotional health is not just about feeling well ourselves. It's also about being able to contribute to community. It's also about being able to work productively. So that's joining the dots again. Reading just for 30 minutes a week was associated with social connectedness, which we've talked about. It was also associated with improving sense of community, feeling that I'm not just a free floating spirit who doesn't have any connections, who doesn't have any links anywhere, that actually I feel connected to people. I feel part of the community. I feel that there are people who are looking out for me, and that there are people whom I'm linked with, not just a free floating spirit. Also, the other thing they found out was that it enhances the theory of mind. The theory of mind is it's simply the ability to understand our own mental state, what's going on in my mind at the moment, the way my feelings going on, but also that of others. And to really be able to understand that the beliefs, the intentions, the beliefs, the intentions that I have will be different from those of others. That the beliefs and intentions that I have will be different from those of others, and that can then improve the way that I interact with them. That it will improve the way that I interact with them. And the other thing is that they also found that actually reading enhances empathy for others. Reading enhances empathy for others. It helps. In fact, what they found was that they looked at, they did a brain imaging. They did brain imaging, and they found out that actually people who, they looked at the brain of those who were reading, and they found out that the same area of the brain that was stimulated was the same area that is stimulated when we are trying to understand other people or trying to see things from their perspective, from their point of view. So those are really the social benefits, and also that reading actually reduces race bias. That when we're able to read into about other people, about their in terms of reading across races, that actually reduces race bias as well. So if we are looking for a world where we are not biased based on people's color or their gender or their creed, then reading is one way, particularly for children, to promote that. And that's also joining the dots. Not only joining the dots in our community now, but looking at the community as a global community where we all work together to fulfill our purposes and to establish what God has called us to do. Right. So this is the tripart care 660 model. Very often I get asked about how can you maintain good mental health? And I'm beginning to wrap up now. How can you maintain good mental health? How can you maintain good emotional health? Well, what are the things that you need to do? And this model, I think, it's a good one to look at. Because if you are able to look at these 6 domains of your life in terms of trust, thoughts, temple, time, treasures, and trauma, then you are home and dry. But the reason I've actually showed this at this point is because I did promise that I was going to give a personal experience of how reading has helped me in a personal way. This really making it personal, bringing it home and sharing my own vulnerabilities here. Just to make this alive and relatable, that this is something we can relate to. And I'm going to focus on the area of trust. If you look at this domain in terms of how managing our trust, actually, that trust is actually a trust in God. However, under those aspects, there is also purpose, really finding your purpose in life, really, because there is quite a lot of research showing that people who live a purposeful life, people who feel that they've got a meaning to their life, that their life is beyond them, that they are here to do something special, no matter what it is, and that they know what it is, and they are pursuing that, it has global positive effect on mental well-being. Across board, people who feel that this is my purpose, this is what I've been called to do, and I'm doing it, I found it and I'm doing it. It's been known to have a positive effect on mental well-being. Now, how do we join the dots from my own experience? The way to join the dots is this, that it would be fair to say 15, 20 years ago, I really didn't know exactly what I was here for. I knew that I was called to do things. I knew I had a sense of purpose. I knew that every person has a call on their lives. There's something that God has called me to do, but I wasn't very clear about it. And it was a period of my life, in my 30s, when I was really very hungry and searching and thinking, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? And I got my hands into so many things. And however, I believe that clarity came for me by reading, not just reading the Bible, which I've also made a reference. Daniel said, Daniel 9:1-3. He said, I, Daniel, understood by the reading of the books. He understood by the reading of the books that actually the captivity of Zion was meant to be for 70 years. Sometimes we also find purpose by understanding from the reading of the books. Sometimes it's actually other books. Now, so for me, from a personal experience, there were other books, and a number of them, I remember 3 or 4 books that really, really shaped and gave me clarity about what I was here for. Will be Dr. Mike Murdoch's The Assignments. There are 4 books: The Dream and the Destiny, The Anointing and the Adversity, 4 of them like that. And then there was also The Power and Principles of Vision, The Power and Principles of Vision by Dr. Miles Monroe. And reading those books gave me a lot of clarity about what I'm here for. But that was not the end of it. It was actually the beginning. Because at that point, with finding clarity to what I was actually here for, one, it improved the way I felt. It certainly improved my self-esteem. It certainly improved also, I became happier in my life, because I now knew that I'm not just floating around. There's something I'm here to do, and I found it, and I'm beginning to do it. And from then, it's been an upward trajectory. The point I'm trying to make is this, that reading can help us to find purpose. And when we find purpose, there's research actually showing that finding purpose has a lot to do with emotional well-being, and that people who find and live their purpose have more satisfied lives. They feel better about themselves, about the world, and about others, and about their future. And I just thought that would be something that I wanted to talk about. And finally, as I'm rounding up now, I'm sure that I probably have only a few more minutes, if that. I just wanted to very quickly talk about writer's block. There are quite a lot of writers in the house, and that's something that I'm sure we all experience at some point when it's like the juices are not flowing. I can't get, I want to write, but the content is not coming. Personally, from my experience, and I'm just going to share that, I found that many, many times when that's happening, it's probably because I'm exhausted physically, emotionally, or sometimes spiritually as well. And that's something to look out for. And the other thing is about atmospheres. Do you know that every place carries an atmosphere? You know, you enter a room, you feel anger. You enter a room, you feel joy. You enter a room, you feel opposition, and there's nobody who has said anything. It's just that you enter that room and you can feel those emotions right there in the room because they are present, because those are spiritual things and you are sensing them. In the same way, actually, as a writer or as a reader, you can actually create atmosphere. And my question to you today to reflect on is, what atmospheres work for you? Over time, I began to realize that there are certain things that when I'm around certain things or certain things are happening around me, it improves my creativity. One of them is music. There are certain music, uplifting music, worship music that actually helps me. I've also noticed that certain atmospheres actually helps. For instance, connecting with nature. I'm not connecting with nature because I want to read, because I want to write. When I'm just relaxed, particularly bodies of water, particularly going by the sea, beach walks, walking by rivers, I find that those, without thinking about them, it just flows. It stimulates my creativity. I also find that exercise does that for me in terms of being, particularly, I call them treadmill moments. A lot of, when I do a lot of public speaking, I do a lot of presentations as well. And I find that a lot of key points, breakthrough points, actually come when I'm on the treadmill for some reason. I think there's a scientific basis to that in terms of endorphins being released and feeling in the good zone. And of course, there are other places as well. I find that interacting with certain people, for instance, I'm beginning to notice that there are certain particular people in my social network that they either get the best out of me or I get the best out of them. And I'm beginning to, I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and I just mentioned something, and he said, "Oh, that's a confirmation for such and such." And then I thought, actually, that's not the first time you are going to say that to me. And it's the same way from him to me. So who are the people that you hang out with that really stimulate that in you? And what are the places that you visit? For instance, I know that when I go to the Royal College of Psychiatrists, for instance, it might be once every 3 months. Or being in that atmosphere actually stimulates something in me. It's about interacting with other people. that really gets those creative juices going. And I think that's the final slide, and really it's about the resources. That's the Billington Reading Between the Lines, the benefits of reading for pleasure, is the one that I quoted the most in terms of reading habits of people in the UK. And reading literary fiction, improving the theory of mind, is about, that's the one about the theory of the mind. And the Johnson one is about, is the quote for, is the evidence for reading, improving our social understanding, particularly to do with race bias. And finally, the Daniel 9:1-3 about the scriptural basis actually that we can learn from reading from the books. And thank you for listening. And yes, and finally, yes, just to round up, finally, they say a good speaker and several times before they are meant to end. I just want to say that I really do have conviction in my heart that there is at least somebody who's listening to me today. You do right, but you probably just feel that you are drying up and you are not so sure about things again. And it's just about taking rest and just chilling out and being relaxed and just stepping back because you are just starting out. Actually, you haven't even you are just starting out. So I'll just like to end on that note and to take comments and responses and questions. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir. It's been, I don't know what to say, so much. I've learned so much today. And if there is something that gives me joy about the Readers and Writers Conference, it is about that knowledge in which we are being impacted. And that is what you have done today with this presentation. I have a lot that I've written down, and I'm sure that our listeners, either you're listening via the YouTube or you are live here with us in the Zoom room, I'm sure that we have learned a lot. We have learned a lot today. I would just want to say, whatever you have learned, can you, just to show that we have learned something, I want us to put it in the chat box, because right now we'll be going to the question and answer session. Dr. Ajayi, can you stop the screen sharing, sir, and so that we could have the, yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So the writer's block was, we have a comment there. I'm coming. Okay. Yeah, so I learned a lot. And one of the things, in fact, I was beginning to connect so many things. You talked about the virtual club, which is one of the things that we have. You know, when God was putting everything together for me, it didn't really make sense. But later I just connected the dots. We have DODM charity, we have the virtual book club. That's where we reach out to people, and people actually give feedback how it's been helpful to them to read. And then you talked about one of the things we could do to our communities to have a book club. Then you said something very important, that research shows that reading is more stress relieving than going on social media. In fact, I found out that people go on social media and they become depressed, because by the time they see their friends that is also on social media posting their seemingly best, and then you're just looking at yourself like, where am I actually in this life, on this planet? Everybody seems to be doing better than me. And it's like that, but it's not actually that way. But when you're just engrossed, you know, with reading, you're focusing on something, and you've chosen your book, you're focusing on something that is really very important, you're gaining more knowledge, you're becoming relaxed. So I think that one, we need to put it out very loud on social media. And you said something that caught my attention also, that is emotional. There is a difference between emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence, which is really quite
which is really quite eye-opening for me, because you might be emotionally intelligent and not intellectual. You can be intellectually intelligent and not emotionally intelligent. So much. Please, let's just put it in the chat. Now it's time for question and answer. So we have Dr. T still with us. Okay, I'm trying to, okay, now I have the chat. Okay, there's some research showing that long hours on social media is also associated with anxiety, depression, and body image problem. Yes, actually, we had a movie shot for the charity called The Pressed. It's on YouTube. I think the movie now has about 5K views, and I've been getting reviews because I was a bit drawn back when, you know, the Lord inspired me to write that, because I just felt, okay, although I have my master's in environmental health, I've written a few papers, but not actually, I'm not a medical doctor. So why would I write something on depression? And, you know, it was when I finished that and put it on, when I began to hear stories of how people have been depressed, I said, this is really something very important that needs urgent attention. And even among people that have faith, that have Christian faith. So it's not because, they are not Christians. That's why it's crossing across so many things. So that movie is there, and then we're going to have the part 2 of the movie and part 3. So if you've not watched The Pressed, you can go and watch it. And some of the things Dr. T has said, I have my notes, so it's just, everything is just coming together. Please, if you have your questions, it's a good time now as we are just chatting to get your questions ready. And you can signify by raising up your hands so that Dr. T can take our question. Dr. T can take our question. So if you have any question, either with the children, you know, he talked about the benefits of reading, what reading does to the children, or to adults. Please, we can use the chat box if we've got questions. We can use the chat box if we've got questions, or we can raise up our hands and then we would be able to, Dr. T will be able to answer our questions. So actually, because one of the reasons why I'm fascinated about the readers and writers is because after we did the last year on raising the next generation of readers, and then okay, let me read what, okay, Sister Kaya said, it helps us to empathize with people better, and it aids emotional intelligence. Yes. Thank you very much for that vital point. So one of the things we found out was when we did the post-conference outreach, we found out that from our guests, we found out that there is a particular set of people, that the elderly, that reading could help combat loneliness. So we are setting up something to help with that age set, and then connecting, going to services to see how we can be able to help. It's just these discoveries that come with reading. But I'll look at the question. Dr. Ajayi posted a question, but I want to ask a question. Is that a way, because from that, is it the 6 tick years or something that looks like our core values? We call it core values here. I saw eating there. Is there a way, something connecting reading with either eating, overeating, or under-eating, or it helps with? That's my attention.
That's thank you. That's a very valid question in terms of whether there is any reading, any connection. I haven't come across any, and it's not something, in terms of managing eating disorders, it's not something that I know that I've come across or that is commonly talked about. However, we do know that in the management of any condition at all, particularly mental, any emotional problems, that one of the things that is recommended is to know about the condition, and particularly also those who are supporting the person who has the condition. So for instance, if a spouse is dealing with another spouse, or a dad is dealing with a son or a daughter, or a person is dealing with a parent who has depression, it's usually highly recommended that that person gets the knowledge of that condition. Because in that case, being knowledgeable in that condition helps the person to be able to support the person who has a diagnosis. So whilst we don't have any I'm not aware of any raw data that shows that reading helps with that. We do know that knowing about the condition is a good thing.
Okay. I would ask another one before I go to the charts. And that is, we said reading would helps to promote bonding. So now we've been looking outwards at our community. Now let's bring it inward to the family. So as spouses or as a family, how do we bond by reading? Because these days we find out that couples, probably someone is on one shift, the person is on another shift. So how do we really find time, or is there any studies that shows that reading help couples to bond, spouses or partners, to bond?
So that's a very interesting one, actually. So in terms of how do we bond together reading, one of the ways that could be done, whilst it's true that we live in a more fast-paced society now, but technology can also help us actually to be more connected. And one of the ways we could do that is to, for instance, as a family, say, okay, we're going to choose to read this book, and then WhatsApp group is a way to. We may not actually sit down and all together. We may not have an opportunity for the 4 of us to come together, 5 of us to come together every day and read the book or talk about it. But then we could get a WhatsApp chat going where people share insights on that book and we're having conversations. And because we are discussing the same theme, we are sharing thoughts and knowledge about the same subject. That can build trust and can actually be a thing to bond over.
So for what you just said, at least it brings the family together and it makes us bond and we are sharing common thoughts.
Absolutely.
So we can say that reading may help the family to bond. So
certainly.
Family people hearing us today, it's one of those things we can challenge ourselves with. Have a family book. This book, we are reading it, and then everybody reads, and then we share our thoughts. It can also help to promote bonding. Thank you very much, sir. I'll just go to the chat now. Okay, Dr. Ajayi says, Dr. Moses Ajayi says, with respect to reading reducing race bias. Is it limited race bias or all bias, sir?
Very, very interesting question as well. So that particular study actually talked about race bias itself. I'm not aware that there are other biases that will be that's been studied, but that's not actually to say that there are no studies out there that don't address other biases or unconscious biases, for instance. But also, I think it stands to reason that when we're able to enter other people's worlds, we're able to connect with them on a different level and to really walk in their shoes. And so that might address some of our biases and our misconceptions or misjudgments about them. It would be interesting that would be something that one could actually look into and see are other biases, or have there been studies? There might be studies out there that actually have looked at other biases. Thank you for that question.
All right, sir. Thanks, so Dr. Moses. So that question has been answered. Thank you, sir. So this question is from Gloria Faboya. It says, with respect to writers having in mind that they write to different people, does it mean that when you're writing a book, you should write it in a simplified way?
Well, yeah, that's very, very good question, actually. I suppose I think it's important for us to first decide on who our audience is, because the reality is that whilst we want to be as generic as possible, there are some of us who have a message that is only for a particular niche. And really, that's what it is. That's who we've been called to. That's the message is for a particular group of people. So we have to tailor our message to them. There are other people who have a more generic message, and they need to be more inclusive. But whichever way, whoever we are writing to, is always good to be as simple as possible. They say if you're able to write in a grammar except when we are writing scientific literature, obviously, but usually that if we're able to write in the grammar that somebody in primary school can understand, then we will capture our audience well. So it's really about understanding our audience and pitching it to their level, but being as generically simple as we can be.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there any other question? Any other question? I'm really so happy with everything we have learned so far. It's been amazing. It's been amazing. So and then Dr. T also said something more important, and this is for writers. He says that we should bear it in mind that post-COVID, we are writing to a what? Who can tell me? I want to be sure you were in this discussion. He said something. There is 3 sentences that completes that. He said writers should bear it in mind that post-COVID, they are writing to a different world. Post-COVID, we are writing to a different world. The world has indeed changed. So we have another question here from Mommy Adenike. She says, for children who have special needs and do not want to read, how can you help?
So the also very, very important question. I think there are a few things to bear in mind for children with special needs. One of them will be to find out what's their best means of being communicated with. So for some of them, it could be audio. For some of them, it could be visual. So what's the best way to really, and sometimes it differs from one child to the other. So it's really about presenting that information in the best way. We studied them and we now know. And of course, using simplified language. And also sometimes it can actually be a means of combining several methods. So maybe visual and audio, for instance. But it's particularly about tailoring it to the need of that child. I think also looking at the learning environment for children with special needs. For instance, one of the things we need to think about, I know that there are people in here on the call tonight who might be stakeholders and decision makers when it comes to the atmosphere or the climate in our places of worship. We Africans, Black people, we like loud music. I can see some
that they went to a particular
some are farming smiles there. And for some of the children, some children with special needs, who they are hypersensitive to
noise,
to loud noise, to hyper-aroused environment. So already we've lost them by creating that type of atmosphere because they're already having to contend with all that is going on in their environment. It's like somebody, the best way to describe it is think about having a bad, severe toothache and you are trying to write an exam. That's a good illustration. You have a severe toothache. You are really old, excruciating headache, toothache, and you are trying to celebrate and write an exam. For children with special needs, that's the way it is. So it's not just about the content. Thank you for asking that question, man. It's not just about the content, but also the atmosphere in which we are giving the content to them.
Thank you so much, sir. So there is need for an holistic plan, reading plan or something in place for that, and it's tailored to the need of that child and not generic at all. Thank you very much, sir. We have another question. It says, one of my past teachers said reading while using our fingers to point onto the words slow down our reading ability. What's your view, sir, with respect to reading with eyes instead of reading along with fingers, pointing on words?
I will say that's something I will say I'm not so sure about. It's not something I've come across. That's what I will say on that one. I'll just say I'm not. It's not something I've encountered. But it's quite an interesting point, and it would be worth actually researching.
Researching on, yeah. I remember when I was younger, at least in primary school, I would be pointing at, as if that pointing will make it to fly into my brain. But yes, that's a good area. That's a good area for researchers. Yes, probably there is a link or not a link. Yes, thank you so much, sir. Mominike says thank you, sir. I think yes, Sister Kaya, you're ready to you have your hands up?
Okay, good afternoon, sir. Good evening, rather. Good evening, sir. Good evening, Ma. Good evening, everybody. So I initially typed my question, but I think because of the chat, it's been covered. So I practice reading on screen and sometimes reading, physically, and sometimes using audio to read. And I'm not very sure of, the most effective method, because sometimes reading on screen affects my eyes after some time. And sometimes reading physically as well can make my eyes feel tired. So I'm like, okay, do they deliver the same amount of benefits? And which one is more effective across board? Yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. A very interesting question. Very interesting, actually, particularly in this day and age. I think what we do know is that everyone is peculiar in the way we learn. There are people who hear things and that's it sticks. There are people who have to see it. I mean, for instance, I would say, I'll just use myself as having studied myself and knowing. When Kindle came, I remember I got my first Kindle about 12, 13 years ago. I remember well because it was a birthday present. However, I was so excited about the Kindle, but it just didn't do it for me. I really prefer raw books. I prefer having physical books. That's not to say there are people who will swear by Kindle, and thank God for them. It works for them. I just didn't get into it. So what I would say is that it's important for us to know what works for us. I also find that as well, that sometimes it depends on what I'm doing. So sometimes rather than, for instance, if I'm driving, usually I drive long distance to work. So I find that listening at those periods can be helpful because at least it's dead time. There's nothing else I can do. I can be listening. So I can listen to an audio book, 40 minutes when I'm driving to work, 40 minutes back. If I do that 5 days a week, that's 40 minutes times 2. That's 400 minutes of audiobooks listening. There's no way that is not going to impact me one way or the other. So I think one, it's about knowing what works for me. But two, it may also be that in order to maximize the benefits, I might use more than one method. That's the way I would say I would approach that.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Especially that's what Dr. T just said now is the absolute key. Use more than one method and find out whatever works for you. It's been. Do we have any other question? Anybody who wants to answer or ask their question before we wrap up this session? You have a question you want to ask? We are on Readers and Writers pre-conference session. And we've just been through a discussion, and that is on reading and emotional well-being. And a lot has been said. If you want to watch the replay, probably you just joined us. If you want to watch the replay, it's on Olubusola Ajayi YouTube channel. Some of it is going to go on our website after today, and it's also going to be on Dr. T's. Is it Tribe Care? I don't want to call it triple care. Can you pronounce it for me, sir? Dr.
It's triparts, like 3 parts. Tripart care.
Okay, tripart care. So is that the YouTube channel?
Spirit, soul, and body. That's what it is.
Okay,
ministering to the spirit, soul, and body.
So it's also going to be on his YouTube aftermath of this program, so we can go and have a replay and listen again. Thank you so much, sir, Dr. T. It's been great. It's been educative. It's been impactful having you at this pre-conference session. We are really so grateful. Thank you so much, sir. So we'll be having a vote of thanks right now. I'll just call on Sister Keye. Over to you for the vote of thanks.
Participants, on behalf of the organization, the Descendants of David Ministries, I am privileged to extend a sincere vote of thanks to everyone who has contributed to this conference. I would like to thank our keynote speaker, Dr. Olubusola Ajayi, for his excellent contribution and for sharing his expertise with us. Sir, your presentation has been very informative, inspiring, thought-provoking, and we have all gained valuable knowledge from your contribution. God bless you, sir. I would also like to express our gratitude to the conference sponsors and partners who has made this event possible. Thank you so much. Without your support, we would not have been able to organize such a successful conference. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants who have attended this conference. Your active participation, engagement, and enthusiasm has made this event a truly memorable one. We hope you have found this conference informative, engaging, and a valuable experience. Once again, thank you to everyone who contributed to the success of this conference, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ma. God bless you. So right now, I'll just say that this is the pre. If you go on our website and if you look at the flow chart, it goes from the pre to the main conference, and then we have, as usual, the press conference outreach. So the main conference is going to be coming up on Saturday, the 1st of July, 2023, and we're going to have the flyers out later in the month. So be on the lookout for the flyers. We're going to have more speakers coming on, and we're going to have different sessions. Please do not miss out on any of these sessions. They are really quite important. Last year we had addiction and elocution coach. Possibly we might have another session of that, because we really learned a lot also from that. Some people would say that because the theme for this year's conference is the reader, the writer, and nation building. And at the pre-conference talk, I said something very important. I said, people, when we talk about nation building, they think of government, they think of the government, they think of those in the parliament. But have you ever thought of yourself? Have you ever thought of you as a nation builder? Because that is what you are. And as a nation builder, when you connect the dots, you're connected to a family, you are connected to a community. Inside of you is so many things. So you are a building block for national growth and development. There's something you contribute when you go to work and come back. There's something you're contributing. For example, to the NHS, there's something you're contributing, to running of the things, everything that runs in your community, flowing to the society, to our nation. So we're going to be looking at so many areas in the main conference. So please do not miss the main conference. It's going to be really very loaded. Saturday, 1st of July, 2023. I hope to see us there. And also, if you're an author, like I announced before, the virtual exhibition stand is still open. It's an opportunity for authors to showcase their work. But we need some information. It's on when you go to DODM charity Instagram page is there. If you scroll through, or on our website, we need your consent that we can put your information out. We need your profile. We need the cover page of your book, and a bit about yourself, where we can get your books. So those are the things that would be projected on the virtual exhibition stand. So if you're an author, or you know someone who is an author, I don't want them to miss out on the virtual exhibition. Please let them send us an email at info@thesenatofdavidministry.com, or Readers and Writers Conference 2022@yahoo.com. So with those details, the details are there. They are easy, but they are really quite important that we have those information to help us prepare. So we have now come to the end of the Readers and Writers Pre-Conference. Thank you very much for attending. Once again, just like Mr. Kaya said, thank you so much. We appreciate everyone that's come. And if you have any question outside of here, I think Dr. T would be happy if I could send him a question on behalf of someone that has a question, and he will reply, and then I'll get your reply, of course. God bless you, and see you at the main conference. Thank you very much.